And finally, we're going to talk about how to complete the IEP document for Case Study 2, Part 1. So, filled out all the information already on the front, on the cover page, so you don't need to do anything here. One thing that I would like you to do, just as you did with the IFSP, under IEP Teacher Manager, please put your name right here, just in case the document gets mixed up with other documents. I always have your name on the document. So that's the only thing. It's not yellow highlighted, but please put your name on the document right here. I filled out all the information already. If you're not familiar with IEPs, please review this information so that you are familiar with it and you can understand how the dates work. So you have to notify parents at least 2 weeks before an IEP meeting, so you'll notice that. Also, when you're writing an IEP, it has to be reviewed at least 1 year minus 1 day from the IEP meeting date. So you can see that this is 1 day before the 1 year anniversary of the IEP meeting. Eligibility is a little bit different. You have to have an eligibility within 3 years of the most recent eligibility date. So just look at the dates and kind of get familiar with them and kind of process the difference, the time differences there, because that is something you need to be familiar with if you're working with IEPs. So in any case, here's the information, the front information for Case Study 2, Part 1. You can put your name here as name of participant if you want to also, either here or up here where I highlighted, doesn't matter. Okay, I left this because it is part of the IEP. Skip it. There's no yellow highlight here. You don't need to fill it out. Just skip that. This is where you're going to write the present level of academic achievement and functional performance. So there is a section, there's space here for you to write it, and you can go on to the next page. If you need to write more, you can copy in or add another page as well. This is where you're going to do that summary information that I talked about in the previous video. When I talked about taking the case study information and looking at the child's developmental level and looking at the family concerns and priorities and the history, the medical information, and how I told you to summarize it and how much to summarize. For example, you need to do one paragraph for at least one paragraph for each developmental domain. This is where that information goes. If you work in special ed, if you work in education and you've seen IEPs, this is one of my pet peeves. Generally speaking, they're not as detailed as they should be. So keep that in mind when you're writing this section. You want whoever is reading this section of the IEP to have a very good picture of the child you're describing. Just putting in general information is not okay. It doesn't help the reader understand where this child is at this point in time developmentally and what works and doesn't work. So make sure you're providing a good level of detail here. Also, remember, this is where you're writing from a strengths-based perspective. You are writing about what the child can do. You may then turn to describe where the child has some struggles or challenges or where there are gaps based on the chronological age and the developmental age of the child. But you want to make sure you're always presenting what the child and family can do first. That's the strengths-based approach. So this is the bulk of the assignment in writing the description or the summary of the child. So you're going to do that right here. These 2 pages, if you need to add more, which I don't think you will, you can go ahead and insert a page. You're going to scroll down and you have to write 2 IEP annual goals in 2 different domains. Where it says area of need and it's highlighted, that's where you're going to write the developmental domain. Are you writing a social emotional goal? Are you writing a communication goal? If it's a communication goal, is it a receptive language or an expressive language goal? Put that information here under area of need. That's where the developmental domain goes. Then you're going to write your first annual goal right here. There's an example in the description. It's written out on how you write that goal. How detailed it needs to be. You need to put the conditions under which the child will demonstrate mastery and for how long, etc. So this is where you're going to write the annual goal. And just as with case study 1, when you're writing a rationale for the goal, you're going to write that rationale here. It should be at least one very well written paragraph, just as with the IFSP goals and rationale. You need to cite information from the case study, and you need to cite at least one other source, either the textbook or a peer-reviewed article. If you need to cite more than that, that's fine. Just make sure that they're professional peer-reviewed resources. So cite correctly in the rationale, and then add those citations, those full citations, to the reference list. So those are the 2 sections you do. Here's goal 1. You don't have to fill any of this information out. And here's goal 2. Again, what developmental domain are you addressing? Write the goal here, write the rationale here, and then you're going to scroll all the way to the end, and there's your references page, and you're going to add your full references. Okay, so this document is a little bit different than the IFSP. For part 3, you have to write about the accommodations that the child needs. So in an IFSP, you don't write accommodations. So it's not appropriate for the way early intervention works. So there's not a document that you're going to use to write the accommodations. That's going to be all text, and we'll talk about that in another video. And again, I'm going to talk about part 3 in another video for case study 2. But you will also have to complete this section for case study 2, part 3. In addition to writing some additional information, you will fill out the accommodations and modifications that might be appropriate for Kim here, just so you get practice writing it on the actual IEP. Again, we'll address it later. It is highlighted in blue, so you know that that doesn't mean you do anything for part 1. Only the highlights in yellow are for part 1 and the references list. I did not highlight that in yellow. So that is it for case study 2, part 1. Hopefully you found this video helpful. And after you do the IFSP, I'm sure you'll be a pro at it by then, and you'll do fine on this one as well. So take care. Let me know if you have any questions.